This video is sponsored by Amazon Prime Video.
So I'm free to go?
Yeah, straight to clown heaven.
You know that movie, The Devil's Rejects, where at the end, the trio of evil sadistic killers get violently mowed down by dozens of police officers all at once, with there being absolutely no way on earth that anybody could survive such a thing, and they definitely most certainly died because of it. Well, they didn't die. They're alive because, of course they are. 20 gunshot wounds each? Pfft, just a flesh wound.
'Tis but a scratch.
Free From Hell is a direct continuation of the previous movie, The Devil's Rejects, which itself was a direct continuation of the movie previous to that, House of a Thousand Corpses. But before we jump into that, I'd like to talk about this video's exciting new sponsor, Amazon Prime Video's newest original series, The Wheel of Time, that's based on the popular fantasy book series. 5 young villagers whose lives change forever when a strange and powerful woman arrives, claiming one of them is the child of an ancient prophecy with the power to tip the balance between light and dark forever. They must choose whether to trust this stranger and each other with the fate of the world before the Dark One breaks out of his prison and the last battle begins. Amazon has just released this incredible, one-of-a-kind, full 360-degree trailer, allowing you to become immersed into the world and experience a trailer unlike any other. This isn't just a traditional trailer that we're all used to, this has something to explore. The spatial audio featured within the trailer will naturally guide you into looking into different directions and seeing what you can find. Depending on which way you choose to go, it's a visual representation of the darkness taking over your screen or the lightness shining over you. To the left of the screen, Maureen's powerful One Power channels, where her voice emanates and faces. Artifacts and symbols can be intermittently found amongst the energy waves, and on the right, the oily corruption of the Dark One represents a descension into madness. Thanks to the utilization of the 360-degree view on both desktop and mobile, this is genuinely an interesting and exciting approach to something like a trailer where you wouldn't expect there to be innovation. And for you keen-eyed viewers, the 360-degree trailer even offers Easter eggs for you to find, so if you come across anything, let me know in the comments what you saw. So click that link in the description to see this exciting new trailer for Amazon Prime Video's newest original series, The Wheel of Time. The movie begins with us seeing a shot of the ending of the previous movie, before we then learn that all 3 of the killers spent a year in intensive care before they all stood trial. And despite, for some strange reason, people actually rallying to their defense, you know, the people who have mutilated, murdered, enslaved, and sexually assaulted countless people, because there will always be idiots in this world, unsurprisingly, they're all found guilty. After seeing a brief interview with Captain Spaulding, we then see a news report that after 10 years in prison, he's been executed with a lethal injection. Much like the previous 2 movies, Rob Zombie had intended for Sid Haig's character to have a much more prominent role in the movie, but unfortunately, due to health issues he was suffering with at the time, his role had to be significantly cut down, and unfortunately, not long after the movie was released, the legendary Sid Haig would pass away. While being filmed by a documentary crew, Otis and a group of other prisoners, including Rondo, one of the bounty hunters who helped capture the Fireflies in the previous movie, are all being transported to perform some manual labor, which in itself is an absolutely terrible idea. Sure, take this deranged, murderous killer who's killed how many people at this point, and put him outside with other humans. Yeah, I'm sure that's a great idea. It wasn't a great idea. As we see next, the documentary crew's camera is laying on the floor as we see someone out of focus executing prisoners. As the man is killing in the background, Otis appears in frame and apprehends Rondo. He puts a gun to his head and pulls the trigger. After his decade-long murder hiatus, Otis is back out into the world to do what he loves best: petting kitties. We see the warden of the prison that Otis was being held at, watching TV with his wife, being far more concerned about how this is going to affect his image than the countless innocent lives that are bound to be taken because of it. Because priorities, I guess. And we then learn who it was that aided with Otis's escape. His half-brother, Winslow Foxworth Coltrane, the Midnight Wolfman, because of course Otis and Baby happen to conveniently have a previously unheard of psycho murderer half-brother. Why wouldn't they? A month now passes, and we see that after 10 years, Baby is now eligible for a parole hearing. But I wouldn't hold your breath, considering all that pesky boring murder stuff tends to be a little bit of an issue. Baby wasn't exactly the most mentally stable of people before she was locked up, and due to 10 years of solitary confinement, you can imagine that she's not exactly improved all that much. Unsurprisingly, she's denied parole, and unsurprisingly again, she immediately responds by breaking a guard's nose. Because you've got to make those good impressions. Winslow is taking a nap in the woods, because it's as good a place as any, but is rudely disturbed due to the barrel of a gun being pushed against his crotch. Are you happy to see me, or is that just a rifle in your pants? It's two random people that recognize him from the news, who intend to take him in for a reward. Like the gentleman that he is, Winslow begins to stall the pair by talking about people defecating all over the man's wife, giving Otis the opportunity to sneak up and blow the man's head off with a point-blank shotgun blast, because he'll be damned if anyone touches his brother's crotch. He takes the knife away from the terrified wife, covered in her own husband's brain matter, and he does what he loves to do best, which is cutting the woman's face off and nailing it to a tree. That's a face skinning by Otis in all 3 movies so far. He's made it a hat trick. Back at the prison, we then see that Baby is being taken from her cell by the officer with the broken nose. She's not very happy about the whole getting her face headbutted situation, so in response, she transports Baby to a secluded basement room and locks her in there with 2 other inmates who intend to cripple her. Keyword being intend, because as the officer returns, she's greeted to the sight of 2 dead inmates laying on the floor, having a nice nap, cuddled up against their internal organs. The warden returns home with a co-worker named Charlie, with the intention of them having dinner with their wives. But when they walk in, they discover that both of their wives are tied up at the dinner table. And it's not the fun kind of tied up either, because as they're standing there, confused and trying to make sense of all of this, Otis and Winslow walk into the room, making it pretty obvious that everybody is going to die a horrifically brutal death pretty soon. Due to Otis being locked up for over a decade, he's been a little bored, so decides to have himself a little bit of fun by telling Charlie that he and his wife were free to leave, before then pulling the ultimate just kidding and shooting him in the gut. Well, that's one way to have fun, I suppose. Winslow's also in the mood for livening up the party and discovers an urn containing the ashes of the warden's wife's mother, and decides the best way to entertain himself is to sprinkle them around the room, right in front of the distraught woman. The doorbell rings, and Otis answers it to discover a clown. And for the life of me, I have absolutely no idea why there's a clown here. But there's only one clown I want to see in my Firefly family movie. Otis points a gun at him and tells him that if he makes him laugh, then he'll be able to leave. The clown clumsily fumbles around the place, desperately and miserably failing at getting Otis to laugh. So Otis gets up, points his gun at him, and then notices that the clown has wet himself, which causes him to laugh. Due to him laughing, the clown asks if he's free to go, to which Otis responds by saying yeah, and then shooting him in the head. Yeah, I don't know why there was a clown here. Otis tells the warden that the plan is for him to go to work tomorrow as if it's an average normal day, get Baby sent to his office by any means necessary, and then sneak her out of the facility using a spare guard uniform. And that's near enough exactly what happens. Except while at work, the warden pockets a small pistol just in case, and while Baby is in his office, she murders the prison guard who tried to have her crippled directly in front of the prison warden, with him unable to do anything about it if he wants to have any chance of saving his wife. Back at the warden's home, Charlie lays on the floor, slowly bleeding to death. The dead clown is sitting on the sofa with a hole in his skull, and we see Winslow and Otis sitting there watching TV next to the women with Charlie's naked wife. The warden returns to the house with Baby just as planned, and upon arrival, almost immediately, Otis turns on the record player to drown out any noises and begins violently bashing Charlie's skull in right in front of his hysterical wife. The warden pulls out his gun and accidentally shoots his wife with it, and Otis shoots him, knocking him to the floor, rendering him unable to move as Winslow cuts open his wife's throat as he sits there watching. Baby follows Charlie's naked wife out of the house and chases her down the street while terrorizing her, before eventually pouncing on her and savagely stabbing her to death on the front yard for the whole street to see. With the warden being the only victim that's still alive, Otis takes this opportunity to give him one of his pre-murder self-righteous speeches before or, well, he murders him. And on their way out of the home, Baby decides to take a headdress and a bow and arrow, because who needs guns? After traveling for a while, they rent a motel room, but are almost immediately forced to flee, because as soon as Baby leaves the room to go to the vending machine, she kinda maybe accidentally murders someone, carves X's into his eyes, and cuts his throat open. Because girls just wanna have fun, I guess. So they then come to the conclusion that after killing, I don't know, dozens or maybe hundreds of people in the United States, perhaps it's time to head over the border to Mexico to make this business global. And maybe they're less likely to be recognized there. They make it to Mexico without incident and decide to rent another room for a while. And hopefully this time, they won't kill someone within 10 minutes of arriving. At least make it 20. Out of all of the places that they could have possibly ended up, they've had the misfortune of ending up here. No, not because it's Mexico, but because the owner recognizes Otis as being the person who killed Rondo. And Rondo's son, Aquarius, happens to be the leader of a pretty serious gang called the Black Satans. So the owner calls him up, and in exchange for 10 grand, he tells Aquarius where he can find his father's killer. By some miracle, the trio haven't already begun a murder spree and have been forced to flee. So instead of killing innocent people to get their kicks, they decide to go and have fun the only other way they know how to. Partying and prostitutes. And after a night of heavy drinking and partying, we see Sebastian, an employee of the motel owner, who has a bit of a thing for Baby and decides to bring her some breakfast. Some romantic, good old-fashioned rice and beans. Because you've got to get those carbs in you when you could break out into a sadistic murderous spree at any given moment. While the pair get to talking, Baby tells him how much he reminds her of her brother Tiny. Yeah, I think I see it. As she's having a little dance around the room, because the beans really just are that good, Aquarius and the Black Satans begin to roll into town. Sebastian runs to warn Otis, and as he's doing so, one of Otis's, well, friends opens the door, which is followed by a rain of bullets, killing both of the women, but somehow not Sebastian and Otis. Like a Skyrim stealth archer, Baby is laying in wait with the bow and arrow that she stole earlier. She's aimed directly at the door, and as a gang member enters the room, he's shot in the neck with an arrow and then violently stabbed to death. Another man comes to investigate the commotion, and for his curiosity, he takes an arrow right through the back of the skull. Yeah, he won't be getting curious anytime soon. Otis and Sebastian are stuck in a standoff with the two armed men outside. Some might say a Mexican standoff, except no, because, well, it really isn't. But I wouldn't think too deeply into it, as Winslow appears and shoots them with a shotgun blast each, and Otis finishes off any survivors. The hotel owner, who sold out the Fireflies for some quick money, is attempting to make a sneaky escape during the chaos, but is very quickly going to learn what being greedy really gets him. It gets him a visit from Otis. You know, the guy who sleeps with corpses, cuts people's faces off, and just kills because he likes to. So he's in for a good time. And by a good time, I mean being repeatedly shot with an automatic rifle at close range. Good times. Baby gets cornered by a gang member in the church, but lucky for her, he'd rather be a typical cliche and talk a load of nonsense instead of, you know, actually doing the job that he was sent here to do and kill her, which gives Sebastian enough time to shoot the man from behind and for Baby to then launch a knife into his neck. But as a side effect of having a gunshot wound and a giant knife in his neck, unfortunately the spray from his gun hits Sebastian as he's falling to the ground. And that's just unlucky. It's not like there was a big surface area to hit. And as Baby rushes to her new friend's side, she's knocked unconscious by Aquarius. She wakes up in the middle of town, restrained next to her half-brother, who had also been taken prisoner earlier. Aquarius shoots Winslow in the chest, and shouts out that he's going to keep shooting until Otis shows himself. Which actually works, somehow, as even though Otis is still armed with a rifle that I'm sure he could use to get the drop on Aquarius with, he comes out of hiding and walks directly up to him. He's not exactly in a position to be bargaining, but for some reason, Aquarius agrees that in exchange for Baby's freedom, Otis must fight one of the Black Satan gang members to the death with a machete. Probably something to do with the fact that this is a movie and movies need drama, but we'll not think too hard into that one, yeah? After fighting back and forth for a while, the opponent slices into Otis's arm and makes a terribly poor choice of judgment and decides that the best thing he could possibly do right now is to lick the blood. An incredibly bold decision on his part, considering that Otis is quite fond of intercourse with dead corpses and unwilling participants. I wouldn't want to find out what's floating around in that blood of his. If he wasn't almost certainly going going to die for the sake of the plot. I'm pretty sure that he just went and signed his own death warrant. During the incredibly manic and hard to follow Taken Free Liam Neeson jumping over a fence style of editing, a still alive Sebastian sneaks up to Baby and Winslow, cuts them free, and passes Winslow a gun. A still alive Sebastian is quickly made a not still alive Sebastian after opening fire, which in the process distracts Otis's opponent, giving Otis the opportunity to run him through with a machete, while Aquarius is then held at knife and gunpoint. Which all could have been avoided if he just, killed everybody when he had the clear chance to do so. But for the sake of being all dramatic and stuff, he's now going to get a dramatic death. He's placed in a coffin, covered with gasoline, and then lit on fire. Because there's nothing quite like barbecue. With the main villain of the movie, who showed up in the final 20 minutes of the movie, swiftly dealt with, the trio walk off into the distance and live happily ever after, conveniently ignoring the fact that Winslow just got shot in the chest, but whatever. They'll go off to continue their murderous escapades somewhere else, no doubt, but the real question is this the end of our time with the Fireflies? Because despite 3 movies following their journeys, well, except Winslow, he just kind of exists now, there's no real conclusion to these main characters. Free From Hell feels very disjointed, and not quite sure exactly what it wants to do narratively. It's left itself open for more. They do literally just end the movie by walking away from everything consequence-free. It would be a shame to reverse the almost definite feeling of the Devil's Rejects ending, to just leave things up in the air now and feeling unfinished. But maybe that's the point. You can't just put a stop to the boogeyman. Well, unless you're Captain Spaulding, because apparently you can stop him with a lethal injection. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to give a big shout out to my patrons. Thank you to Dom, Bort, Hunters263, Rebecca Pitts, Total Drama Rebooted, A Dandy in Space, Martin Brannan, Natasha Twyman, Rin and Whiskey, Jarrett C. Bees, Nicholas, Pascal Mathis, @x.factors, Alex X. Jackson, Fighting the Pirates, Tajvir Sandhu, Victor Kartalov, Richard McGowan III, Kyle York, Eddie Shivink, Macy J, Reese Harford, Horatio, and Toby. Your guys' continuous support to the channel is incredibly inspiring. Not every video gets the privilege of being sponsored, and with YouTube not being exactly keen on monetizing this type of content, the fact that there are people out there who are willing to financially support what I do is nothing short of amazing. So thank you so much guys for believing in the channel and contributing towards it as well. The channel's also got a Discord server, so if you'd like to discuss this movie or other movies in general with like-minded people, there's a place where you can come together to do just that. And if you had any recommendations for this series, that would be the best place to leave them. So once again, thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you to everyone else for watching.